Good. Yeah. Okay. I just want to make some. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, now it is. I was kind of forgetting. Where are you around? It'll have like a cage. Because I'm actually walking here. People are talking about. Yeah, I needed to sit myself in that dead little thing just now. I was like, oh, oh. Oh my God.
I'll tell you a stat, and this is part of the reason why I feel the way I do about y'all. So I did a documentary a while ago, and I talked to the nonprofit founder. And when I did the doc, he said, Lisa, he says, I want
She is doing something because she is with the Langston Hughes Center, and they graciously gave us this space to host this forum without hesitation. Tiffany offered the moment we started talking. There's Tiffany. Let's give her a hand. The moment we mentioned this forum, Tiffany offered this space to us. And it is so valuable, not only because we can be together and commune, but because we are in one of the zip codes in Baltimore that sends the highest number of Black men to prisons. And we're here to talk about the mass incarceration crisis. So it feels appropriate to be having these conversations in the spaces that are actually affected by them. So just a huge thank you to Tiffany and everyone here at the Langston Hughes Center. We're so grateful to you. And then hopefully you all had breakfast from Jay's Catering, a wonderful organization that prioritizes second chance employment. And we will have lunch from Lillian Southern Box Catering, compliments of the University of Baltimore. I'm trying to find Heather Warnkin. I thought I just saw her. There she is. University of Baltimore Center for Criminal Justice Reform and Arnold Ventures. So we are so grateful for them offering us this opportunity to provide lunch for everyone. And Lily and Southern Box Catering looks amazing, and I can't wait to try it. So thank you, Heather, and everyone at University of Baltimore. And is Kenya here yet? She might not be here from Lily and Southern Catering. Okay, so those are very brief thank yous. I also extend the deepest thank you to all of my subcommittee co-chairs who have been working so hard on bringing people together. And that brings me to really the point of this event, right? We're talking about collaboration. So of course, my background is I grew up doing crosswords with my dad. So I looked up the definition of collaboration because I'm curious. We say it all the time, right? And what I found was the action of working with someone to produce or create something for others. And my favorite part about that is the for others, right? We come together and collaborate not just to serve ourselves, right? We come together and to collaborate to serve others. And I have really seen that borne out in our group, in our prison, jail, and detention reform group. If you are in the prison, jail, and detention reform group, can you raise your hands? Nice and high, guys. Come on. Oh, a pretty good number. Okay, I think some of you guys don't have your hands up, even though you do participate. But let me tell you that when I first heard that the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of the Public Defender were going to get together and collaborate to end mass incarceration, I thought, interesting. I have wanted to be a public defender since I was 19. I always knew that that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in criminal legal system reform. And I have some reservations about collaboration because usually what that means for me and my experience as a line attorney is a plea deal or some sort of bargain to eventually send my client to prison. So when I got to the first meeting and I was like, okay, I'm going to approach this with an open mind. I heard, and I'm talking about our prison, jail, and detention first meeting, not the big collaborative, but our first meeting. I made everyone introduce themselves, which people hated because it took like 30 minutes to have everyone introduce themselves. And we only had an hour scheduled for the meeting. But part of the reason that I wanted to do that, and one of the things that I first noticed was everyone was so excited to share where they were from and why they were there, right? Everyone has their own story that brings them into this space. Everyone has a job, a personal experience, a family member, a friend that has brought them into this space. And it is so heartening and it is so powerful to know that we're not just here because of a title on our emails or because we, feel that we need to be here. everyone in the prison, jail, and detention work group shows up and really puts in the work. And let me tell you, collaboration is not easy, right? Collaboration is not something that everybody comes together and reaches an agreement. That's not what we have strived for, and that's not what we have achieved. What we have achieved is everybody fighting for the same thing, improving our prison, jails, and detention conditions, decarcerating our prison and jails, and making sure that the individuals who are incarcerated have access to education. And everybody is fighting for those three things. And sometimes we don't agree about the right way to do it, right? Sometimes we disagree about what parole reform looks like, or we disagree about what the proper course of policy may be. But the important thing about our group, and what I'm so grateful to witness and be part of, is that everyone genuinely wants things to get better. And we lead with that. And hopefully all of you have a copy of the program. You can scan on the back of the program our MEJC report. So the Greater Collaborative did a report to release recommendations. And we, the Prison, Jail, and Detention Group, have 3 recommendations in there. And you're going to hear about the first ones from the experts in just a moment. But we had a reform to medical and geriatric parole recommendation, which we have actually already passed into law. And I have to give a special shout out to Ms. Shakina Braveheart and Chairman Ely, who have been working on this issue for a very long time. Yes. And they're going to go into detail about what the reform looks like. But my favorite thing about this reform passing is, I would say maybe a week after the bill passed, this reform goes into place, I hear from my decarceration and parole subcommittee, okay, so what's it going to look like in implementation? How are we actually going to make this happen, right? We accomplished our recommendation. We accomplished reforming medical and geriatric parole, this huge task that had been underway for, I don't know, 10 years maybe?
Yeah. Years for the bill.
Yeah, and 4 years for the bill. And the moment it was accomplished, everyone wanted to know what the next step was. How do we use this to serve people? How do we use this to help people who are currently incarcerated? And I just think that is such an example of the people we have in this room. It shows what the people we have in this room are like. Our other 2 recommendations are still on their way. We're still working on them, and you're going to get to hear a lot about our efforts to enhance parole transparency and improve parole efficacy from our panel at 9:30. They're going to give you a lot of details about what collaboration really looks like in that space, and how we can effectuate change without passing a law or, drafting legislation. And then our third and final recommendation, which sadly Judge Karim is not here to talk about, but is something that has been a work in progress, is a specific unit tailored to 18 to 24-year-olds, so the emerging adult population, to help infuse them with specialized services and supports to improve their recidivism rates and make sure that they don't re-enter the system. And those were our 3 recommendations, because those were the 3 things that we saw as the most fundamental ways we could make a change that would keep people out or get people out of prison as fast as possible. Because, and I just want to remind everyone that today's conversations and the root of MEJC is to end mass incarceration. I'm sure you all have heard the numbers, right? Not only does Maryland have a mass incarceration problem, it has a racist mass incarceration problem, right? In the report, it talks about Black Marylanders comprise 30% of the population and 71% of our prison population. That's embarrassing, right? That is horrific. That's a crisis. And I want to end on that because that is what all of these conversations are rooted in, recognizing that not only are we over incarcerating Marylanders, but we are very specifically over incarcerating Black Marylanders. And that's a problem that we need to solve and a problem that we've been working on, and we are excited to have you help us work on. So with that, I will turn it over to Shakina and Chairman Ely, and thank you guys so much for being here. We look forward to having a great conversation today.
Good morning, all. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do it this way because I can't chew gum and walk at the same time. I can't hold a mic and talk. So bear with me for a second. And you're going to read the honors of starting.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
I'll start. Good morning, everybody. As Elizabeth said, I'm Shakina Braveheart, Advocacy Associate with the Justice Policy Institute, which actually closed its doors last Friday. However, we got some great work done over the 30 years that it existed. And over the past 2 years, some tremendous successes around laws that would decarcerate if we implement them correctly. And we have strong reentry support. I believe it was back in 2021 that parole law practitioners, advocacy organizations, researchers, family members of incarcerated people and deceased people, we organized around reforming geriatric and medical parole in Maryland. It was not easy. And it took 4 years to get through. But I want to point out, and I thank Elizabeth for talking about collaboration. The bill that is now law has been a collaboration from the very beginning. JPI's report on the Maryland parole system back in 2023 was based on data provided by the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. The briefing that we presented before the Maryland Senate Judiciary Committee was, it really was a partnership with DPSES and MPC. We presented the hard data, but we got it from them. We spoke about the individuals who've been impacted by the system, some people who had gone up for parole 7, 8 times and were denied. We looked at the inconsistencies and of people who had identical backgrounds, but the outcomes were vastly different for them. And we were really grateful that DPSES and NPC worked with us. One of the things that stuck with me that year was that the then chair, was Chairman Blumberg, stood up before the committee and said, we can only do what the law allows us to do. If we want to change this thing, we're going to have to change the laws. So we really appreciated that. And from there on out, I think the following years when the MEJC was formed, and it was really helpful. One of the benefits, the main benefit of having representation from justice organizations, state agencies, impacted groups, direct service providers is almost unlimited insight. We don't know everything, but when you come into a situation and you have someone from DPSES in the room and we have grievances and oftentimes very legitimate ones, it is extremely helpful to have someone right there and say, no, this is how it actually works. And then we can say, no, this is how it impacts us in real life. And then somebody else can say, okay, well, this happens there. And we can come to solutions that way. So I really look forward to continuing that with MEJC and celebrate our success today. It is really wonderful. We don't have a lot of time. We only have 15 minutes to talk. So I wrote down some notes because I want to make sure, and Chairman Ely is going to talk about, all the technical aspects of the bill and some more stuff. But I really want to stress the importance of implementation. Elizabeth touched on that. because we did all the good stuff. We expanded public knowledge and policymakers' understanding of all that good stuff. But I really would like to directly engage the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of the Public Defender to make reentry reform a 2026 policy priority for MEJC. Right? You supported this legislation, but we need more. And this is why. We've identified a number of barriers to housing when it comes to those in need for placement, especially people who need to be in nursing homes and assisted living care. In 2024, the Maryland Parole Commission released, I think, 16 medical parole. It's improving, and thank you for that. And then for the 3 people that were released on medical parole in 2025, only 1 could go to a nursing home. And that is because post-COVID, nursing homes were bought out by larger organizations, larger like conglomerates. So they are risk adverse. And this isn't just a problem for parole folks, state agencies across the board. They're just reluctant to take in people from another institution. So we really want to work on that, to engage our policymakers around that. Also, nonprofit residential reentry programs are very job focused. We all know that, right? That, they help people get jobs. If you have substance abuse issues, they help you there. Mental health, they help you there. But they are not ordinarily places where people who are retirement age would go, right? Because they need you to work. So there are many areas that we want to make sure are that could accommodate this population. So we really did a strong, robust reentry support for this population. We can talk about this in depth with the medical treatment work group, where I think we're the second or third to talk, and we're going to have tables around there so we could talk about this issue more in depth. But I thank you, and I'm going to pass it on to Chairman Ely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. First of all, I'd like to give thanks to Madam Secretary, that will be Carolyn Scruggs, for her vision and her focus on collaboration in the words of Elizabeth, make things better for all. The Office of the Governor for their support in this very important legislation. Our collaboration with the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Planning, Ms. Dorothy Lennick, for her financial support in the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services to hire additional psychologists to focus on risk assessments and help us with the backlog we have. Also, more importantly, Senator Shelley Hettleman for sponsoring the bill and her fortitude and determination in sticking with the effort for over 4 legislative cycles. Senator Hettleman, I just can't say enough for her. Vice Chair Bartlett and Chair Clippinger for sponsoring the companion bill in the House and shepherding it through the Judiciary Committee. Chair Will Smith and Vice Chair Muse for supporting the bill and working with the Attorney General, Office of the Public Defender, and the Maryland State's Attorney Association to craft the final version and get it through the Judiciary Committee on the Senate side. And of course, the advocacy community, all of you here. This has been a master class in collaboration. I mean, so many diverse organizations, individuals, people working towards a common goal. And I think this really lays the foundation for the future in terms of our collaboration together and really sets a precedent as we can move forward to make things better. I'm going to give some high-level overviews. I'll start with the medical parole. Can everyone hear me okay?
No.
Oh, you can't?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't cheat. This brave heart's going to help me out here. Can you hear me now? Secretary Brooks?
Speak up, sir.
Okay, I have to see at the same time. Okay, medical parole overview, eligibility and considerations. Must consider age, risk of recidivism, and public safety. It applies to individuals who are chronically debilitated or incapacitated. Those who are terminally ill require extended medical care only available in the community, and physical incapable of being a danger to society. Required documentations. Recommendation from the DPSCS, Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, or independent medical professional. and the medical details must provide the condition, description, prognosis, the physical incapacity, and the mental health evaluation, if relevant. The discharge plan, should community treatment be available, family support, housing, and hospice care, case management information, offense details, institutional history, and criminal background, procedures. Independent medical evaluation must be in person and treated equally to Department of Public Safety and Correctional Service evaluations. Incarcerated individuals or their representatives can request meetings with the commission. The commission may deny requests or ask for more information. Parolees must be returned to custody if they no longer meet medical criteria or pose a public safety risk. Imminent death allows for reduced victim notification. We have a victim notification period of about 120 days, but if there imminent death, we can shorten that period of time. Now I'm going to focus on the overview for geriatric parole. The eligibility, age 65 or older, serve at least 20 years, not a sex offender, serving a parolable sentence. No category of serious infractions in the last 3 years. Procedure, Department of Public Safety must regularly provide names of eligible individuals. The risk assessments are required for sentences of 40 plus years and multiple violent crimes. Commission may order risk assessment for others, may order. Parole hearings must be held promptly. Rehearings are allowed every 5 years. Age must be considered as a factor in reducing recidivism. Reporting and resources, saving from reduced prison population fund in terms of the risk assessments, parole hearings, and reentry support. Commission must report parole approvals and denials, convictions, post-release, timeframes for hearings, and annual updates we need to provide for regulation must be provided to eligible individuals. Now I'm just going to cite some data we have currently. I know I probably have like 3 minutes. Okay, here we go. 8% of departments send its population to age 60 or older. There are currently 259 individuals who meet the age and sentence criteria. An additional 19 would be eligible and already approved for parole. Other individuals potentially impacted by this bill, they have on average served almost twice the minimum time served threshold. Most are between the ages of 65 and 70, and 62% have already had 1 parole hearings. Thus ends my presentation. We have time for questions, but
We may, I don't know. Does anyone have any questions? Can we do it this way? All right. Back
Yes,
to
sir.
her.
First, I just want to say thank you. This is kind of amazing. You don't know about these situations. Rarely in the past have you seen the chairman of the parole commission collaborating with somebody involved with Justice Policy Institute and everybody else speaking about problems and how to resolve those problems. So this is something amazing. I want to congratulate you for taking that step, and I think you're doing a great job.
thank you, Mr. Connor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, that is noteworthy. Thank you. Because I was just going through my notes and I was trying to get everything out in this little short period of time. But it is notable that when this thing started, that we were on opposing teams at first. Yeah, and then this year, like he said, we had my goodness, the State's Attorneys Association. For the first year, stood down and we actually had a letter of support from Ivan Bates, which was, shocking. So, so times have brought about a change. But, the reality is, it is embarrassing to have this racial disparity. And it was very powerful. I wish they were here today. I invited these brothers here. They didn't come, because people work. But I think the most powerful thing about the 2025 House hearing for this bill was the 8 Black men who had, their average age was about 71. And they'd all been incarcerated for 30 years or more, who testified in support of this legislation. They testified last year too, and it was the bill sponsor, the House sponsor, Delegate Bartlett, who actually called me and asked me, would you organize and bring those guys that came last year? Because they made such an impact. Everybody in judiciary were talked about the things that they said, the insights that they had, the wisdom that they imparted during the last year's hearing. So I did bring them back. The ones who could come back, some of them could not for health reasons. But I wish they were here for me to just give them the shout out and give them their praise to their faces, because I really think that that made a tremendous difference this year.
Any other questions? This is definitely a conversation, so there will be a question and answer. I see Mr. Gant with his hand up. Give me 1 second. At the end of every panel, and then the tabling session is just going to be an open conversation. There will be 4 tables set up with experts at each table to have conversations and share their knowledge and insight with you. Yes, Mr. Gant.
Thank you. Yes, sir. So, you know, it's a talk. Asian, very I think you mentioned those years, you all kind of thought of.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat the question for everyone. Christian Gant from the Attorney General's office, thanks for being here. He asked, there seems to be some conversation around difficulty implementing medical and geriatric parole, especially with figuring out transitioning individuals to nursing homes or other facilities where they can receive the care they need, and was just wondering if there were conversations around that. We actually have a table dedicated to that later in the tabling portion. And Ms. Braveheart will be discussing it. If you can see Tori on the back wall, standing up is pointing to where the table will be, and there's some talking points already started there. So yes, that is something we've already started talking about. And you know, I think it's going to take a lot of creative solutions to get to a place where we can make sure that these individuals aren't in prison just because we can't find a safe nursing home for them. Good question. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Well, we're going to go straight into our next panel, and then we'll take a break. Big round of applause again for Ms. Braveheart and Chairman Ely. If I can have my prison parole and decarceration team come on up. And then I'm sorry, I have to make one administrative announcement. We have 2 cars that are blocking the way for our food pantry. A Toyota SUV with the tag 8GJ8195. And then a Honda Accord with an Alabama tag. Unfortunately, fortunately, the Langston Hughes CBRC does a food pantry as well, and we want to make sure that they have access to unload and load as they need. Thanks, guys.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Michelle Kennedy Quadio. I'm Vice President of A Mother's Cry, an organization right now that's focusing on conditions in prison. I do have to give a shout out to the Public Defender Dartine and also the Attorney General Brown for opening up this space of collaboration. I think that as advocates and also parts of DPSCS, we've learned to communicate, to learn, and to understand. And in building the understanding, I've served as co-chair with Gordon Pack for the last, 2 years, Gordon. Yeah. And we came to understand each other, and we were working like hand in glove, and I love that. I want to take just a moment to recognize the commissioner and his team. A Mother's Cry, joined by Phil Karoum, had a great meeting yesterday. This is what the collaboration and cooperation means, so that now advocates are actually able to work with DPSCS in very meaningful ways to do something that's going to positively impact incarcerated individuals, but also, as we shared with the commissioner, his team, the staff working behind the walls. So I want to give a shout out to the commissioner and his team and also the staff working behind the walls. And there's probably some things I've forgotten, but that's okay. Oh, yes, the most important thing is that my son has been at ECI for almost 9 years now. And it's the president, Jamesina Green, could not be here today. She sends her greetings. She started a Mother's Cry 24 years ago. We've been a nonprofit for the last 2 years. As I joined as vice president, we're moving in a strategic focus and collaboration with the commissioner and his team. And so we hope to improve the conditions in prison so that when we're working also on decarceration plans, that we get a better balance of staffing and the improved facility conditions. So I would say that for both Jemsina Green, the president, myself, and other mothers that are part of this organization, you can't ignore a mother's cry, and especially smart women that are mothers. And when our sons and daughters are reaching out to us, I shared some of the stories with the commissioner and his team yesterday. It's hard for a mother to look away and not to say, what can be done? I will tell you that when my son was sentenced, I thought unjustly, I was angry. And it was actually Senator Will Smith, he's my representative, that suggested I contact Major. And I became involved in Major. I'm pushing for legislative now for focus on Mother's Cry for prison conditions. Today, we have a panel of, and this isn't the complete list of our collaborators on the prison parole and decarceration. We have about 20 members. There are 4 today representing this group. Heather Warnken, who's the executive director for criminal and social justice reform at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, is going to moderate. So each person will have about 8 minutes, facilitated by Heather. And then after 35 minutes, we're going to open up to about 10 minutes of audience questions. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic to you, Heather.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And huge shout out to Michelle and Gordon, our co-chairs on this subcommittee. Given the broad scope of work that our center does, I've had the opportunity to participate in a lot of the different working groups across the areas of MEJC. And I have just been blown away about the amount of hard work and consistency and dedication that has come out of this particular working group and this particular subcommittee. You know, MEJC is a consensus building model, as we've already talked about today. It's intended to bring together really diverse perspectives and different stakeholders to the same table who all need to be a part of advancing change. And that can be really hard and it can be very complicated, and to keep people consistently at the table is really challenging work. And so much credit to the dedicated working group members who have been putting in the work on a bi-weekly basis and so much effort in between to really advance this. So there's so much expertise that you'll hear from today, and we're just going to be skimming the surface on a lot of what we've been working on. I also want to just give a huge shout out to Shakina. I know I'm feeling really heavy about JPI's closure, and others are as well. And I just want to give you and the whole JPI team your flowers. I appreciate you so much. Your contributions are so valued, and I know it doesn't end here. Okay, so with that, I'm going to do some high-level intros of our amazing panelists, and then, as Michelle said, we're just going to dig in, and we're really going to save some time at the end to engage with the audience. So first, just by way of introduction, first we have Dr. Tanzania Merriweather, Chief Administrator of the Maryland Parole Commission. We have Ann Bocchini-Pack, who's the Director of Advocacy at Prepare. And we have Gordon Pack, who, in addition to being a parole advocate for Prepare, is reentry coordinator for University of Maryland, Baltimore's Embrace initiative, and a former juvenile lifer who served over 40 years in prison and had hearings in the double digits. So yeah, just an amazing journey that you've been on, and really looking forward to hearing your wisdom. And I'm going to start with you, Gordon, on that exact note. If you could share with us a little bit more about the notorious Life Means Life era in Maryland, what things were like going into that climate, and how things look today, given your experience?
Thank you. I'm looking a little confused. I was looking for the, shit, who the car? Okay, okay, sorry. All right, again, good morning. Thank you for, thanks, I just thank everybody for being here. As, Heather mentioned, I unfortunately and, ashamedly spent 40 years in prison. There we go. It's 40 some years, actually 43 years in prison. And I regretfully talk about this because I think it's information that people need to know. So we're talking about a shameful period in Maryland's history where people with parole eligible life sentences weren't given the opportunity to be released. This started during Governor Glendenning's, the former Governor Glendenning's, I guess, leadership. He took the position in order to maintain public trust and to stay in office that he had to be tough on crime. So what he ended up doing was saying publicly statement outside the House of Correction in front of everybody, news media, that he is not going to parole any lifer at all. He instructed the parole commission not to make any recommendations to him. So for 24 years that followed, even after he left office, not one lifer was paroled outright in the Maryland system. For many of those years, two of those years, the parole commission didn't even make recommendations to the governor. This is giving me a problem. Can y'all hear me? Because I got a big mouth anyway. I want people to hear me, and I need people to understand this. So for a 24-year period, people did not have an opportunity with parole-eligible sentences to be considered for parole, to get the opportunity to get out, because Maryland's system was structured where the governor had the final say-so to approve those releases. And he took a position that I am not going to approve it, don't recommend me, and it's not going to happen. And this continued with other governors that came in the process as well, because it showed they were tough on crime and it kept people voting for them. The downside of this is that when you have a parole eligible sentence according to statutory law, depends on when you fell, you're supposed to be considered for parole, have a meaningful parole hearing when you reach 15 years less diminution credit or 20 years or 25 years less diminution credit. Which means in my case, going to prison as a 15-year-old in 1979, I became eligible for parole in 1992, right when this process started. So instead of me getting some meaningful parole consideration at that time, it changed. I would not get that opportunity to be released until 20-some years after that. Now, this is a problem, was a problem with the system. Some of this is in my head because I had this, I just detested the system. A system that wasn't fair, a system that changes gradually over time. I detested it because I had no control over it. But it's my fault for putting myself in that predicament. But the reality is that society changes, views and opinions change, laws change. But one thing that hasn't changed regarding lifers, statutory law says a lifer is eligible for parole at a certain time. It has not been changed in decades. Here's the problem. Other laws have changed. Technically, a 40-year sentence is supposed to be less than a life sentence. Because now if you have a violent offense, you get 40-year sentence. You have to do 20 years, day for day, before you're eligible to be considered for parole. Here's the lifer, because things haven't changed. He becomes eligible at 15. That puts our parole commission in a conundrum. Life is supposed to be to live your sentence. How can I realistically consider you for parole now if your sentence is supposed to be greater than a person with 40 years? So that's something that's hanging out that it hasn't been changed yet, but that's something because the parole commission has to consider all of these factors when they make a decision. So statutorily, this is supposed to take place. In reality, we have to be fair and look at how our society has evolved. So that's something that needs to be addressed, and it hasn't been addressed yet. So you're in this situation where you can't reach parole. What do? Many people gave up on parole. Many people became horrible people. It was horrible when they went in, but they had no more hope. A lot of those people have died. A lot of those people got new charges while they were in prison. A lot of people gave up and didn't go for parole anymore because it was useless. The system wasn't designed to be that way. This is the old system. We're talking about maybe 15% of the prison population that falls in this category. But the reality is that as society evolves, attitudes and outlooks evolve as well. And you can't hold people to the same standard that was held 20, 30, 40 years ago, because society is not the same. The commission is not the same. Another issue that comes along with this, and I don't want to beat the dead horse, but people need to understand that back in the day, it wasn't way back, maybe 2-3 years ago, most of the parole commission consisted of white male former law enforcement officers. That was the reality. These were the people entrusted to make the decisions about these horrific cases or the most dangerous cases. In reality, they could only consider things from their perspective. So that was a disadvantage to other people coming up that's just changed and trying to do the right thing because this is the regime. Now, all of these people, all of these commissioners, I can't talk bad about all of them. I could identify 2 right now I could talk real bad about because I didn't like the politics. I could. Not the professional right thing to do. But there are also some that really did a great job that weren't reappointed that I believe should have had a chance if we look at their record and what they were doing. Now, according to Secretary Scruggs' great ambition, great strategy, the parole commission is more diversified. You have social workers, you have lawyers, you have medical professionals, it's a balanced commission. And because it's so balanced, now when you go up for hearings, people can look at it from different perspectives, and the outcomes have been much better. They really have. So even though we're talking about this life means life thing, it's only 15% of the population. Overall, the parole commission is functioning better. More people are getting relief. There's more collaboration between people, but it took a lot to get to this point. And for decades, it wasn't that way. So I really appreciate the opportunity of sharing that. Still have my issues because sometimes I feel like, man, I shouldn't even been in there that damn long. But the reality is I don't get to make that decision. And sometimes the parole commission didn't get to make that decision. That's up to the governor. And that's how the law was. But they took the governor out of the equation, and now the parole commission, this commission we have today, are doing fantastic with that because they're letting people out. People are getting out in numbers. Lifers, long-term people, they're getting out in great numbers, and they're doing well. And I just like the way things are going. So please, please, please don't think that the system is the same as it was 40 years ago, because it's not. I'm a living witness to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Gordon. That really powerful theme that you hit on, which to me is such a profound part of the work that this subcommittee is doing about the difference between no hope or a time period or policy decisions or a climate that extinguished hope and humanity and the consequences of that, and how powerful it is to introduce hope back in. And second look, geriatric medical parole, so much of what this group has been working on, like that is a common theme. I'm also so glad that we've got our final amazing panelist who's joined us. I will do your intro. Samantha Barrett is the Deputy Director of Operations at the Maryland Department of Parole and Probation. Thanks for being here. I'm going to go next to you, Dr. Merriweather. You all have been very busy, and I would love for you to speak on what's the most important policy accomplishment that you've made in this past year in your view.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this decarceration subcommittee. I'm going to get to my our most important as the Maryland Parole Commission and the decarceration subcommittee. Our most important policy. I'll get to that in just one second, but I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. Right now, we're making history. Maryland Parole Commission is making history. The state of Maryland is making history. The decarceration subcommittee is making history. So I'm so happy to be a part of this. And years from now, I'll be able to think back on this, and I'll maybe even be able to read about it on the good work that we've done. Now, moving on to the most important policy change that has came to be would be the transparency policy. Now, I remember this, it takes me back to this cliche, knowledge is power. Has anybody ever heard of that cliche? Yeah. So it's kind of familiar, right? I don't think knowledge is power. I think knowledge is nourishment. It feeds our soul. It gives us energy, gives us hope, as Gordon spoke about. It gives us hope. Knowing is half the battle. That's another cliche. Again, I disagree with it. I think it's nourishment and power. Now, the reason why I say that is because have you ever been to a doctor's appointment and you're sitting waiting for those test results to come back? Y'all remember that feeling, right? Feeling a little anxious, like, geez, I hope everything is okay. Until whether it's okay or whether it's not going to be okay, when you get the information, now you have a plan on how you're going to move forward. The transparency policy that was set into place to give our incarcerated individuals who are coming up for parole gives them that plan. Now I have a plan. I know what I need to do at my rehearing. I know what I need to accomplish, how I need to move forward. In the past, they were giving a refusal with very little guidance. Now we're opening it up. The form is open up. We can tell you exactly what you need to do to meet requirements so you can be able to reintegrate. They get an opportunity to reintegrate. We're also collaborating with parole and probation. We're collaborating with DOC, social work, and all our other sister agencies to make sure that we're all on the same page. Case management is a big deal. We're all on the same page. We're given the information needed in the transparency. So the incarcerated individual will know what needs to be done. Am I to get my GED? How much programming should I need to take? And if I have a longer sentence, will I be able to take that programming? What programs are available for me? So with that, we have broken down the walls of communication and collaboration with our sister agencies, which is also a huge asset to what we're doing here. I'm able to get on the phone with Miss Barrett over here and say, hey, I got a question about this guy's coming out of parole. Will he be able to get into this program? Will he be able to get some employment? So we're able to pick up the phone and make those phone calls. We're able to pick up the phone and make a phone call into DOC. Hey, is there programming available? Case management. Hey, is there programming available? I thought I seen Director Cram over there. She over there. I'm able to pick up the phone and collaborate with her on where we can find housing, especially for our geriatric and medical parole. We're all we're talking now as we speak. It's funny that we're here as we speak. We're coordinating meetings now to meet with Director Cram, Ms. Barrett, and everyone else who is a stakeholder in this so we can get placement for our geriatric and medical parolees who needs those assisted living facilities. So it's the biggest and most detrimental and most exciting change is the collaboration and the transparency of being able to collaborate with not just the my sister agencies and brother agencies, but also even with the incarcerated individual. The parole commission answers maybe 100 to 200 letters per week. We're rolling them out. We're sending out answers. We're talking to the loved ones. We're talking to the representatives. We have even Prepare. We have Ann. I speak with Ann on a regular, calls me up. Hey, as a matter of fact, we were just over there in the corner as I was waiting to get up here, collaborating on new ideas on how we can move forward. So the biggest policy change, it's huge and I'm excited about it, is the fact that we're able to be transparent. We're able to collaborate and partner with everyone in the community, not just my sister and brother agencies, but everyone in the community. We're taking phone calls. I'm taking phone calls myself. Good morning, Dr. Merriweather speaking. How can I help you? From parents, from loved ones, from Ann, from Gordon, from Michelle, from Miss Braveheart, anyone who needs us. So again, I cannot harp enough on the transparency. And I don't want to take up too much time because I
No.
go on and on.
You're
I
right.
still got more time.
You got a few seconds.
I would like to thank our chairman who has, who's gave us such great leadership. And as Gordon said, we do have a very diverse board. We have even a forensic psychologist.
Wow, that's awesome.
So we have many different perspectives that's being sought here, which is absolutely awesome. So am I out of time?
You're right on time.
Okay. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Merriweather. Okay, we have one administrative announcement. We still have one car that needs to move, the Toyota SUV. I believe it's a RAV4 plate 8GJ8195. You should move your car. We'll go to Ann. Thank you. Glad we cleared that up. Okay, so Anne, coming to you next. Obviously, we still have a long way to go and a lot of work to do, but we're hearing about some really exciting steps forward. Would love for you to speak on how have these strides forward and improved collaboration and policy change been helping the clients you're serving every day?
Thank you, and thank you to everybody who's come out to listen to the wonderful progress that we've made. I am the formerly incarcerated co-founder of Prepare. I started this work before Prepare was even thought of in 2017 while I was incarcerated at MCIW. I did the first 5 years behind the walls. And in 2017 and 2018, I only can say it was like scorched earth. You had no lifers coming home. People with long sentences faced huge barriers. And I had several women that I knew who were forced to return home to their abusers because they were told that they would have to sit in prison for several months while somebody figured out a home plan if they wanted to change that address. It was scorched earth. And I have seen incredible progress, in particular under the current administration, really starting with the changes that we saw rolling out in 2019, 2020, you started to see a little acceleration. In 2021, we really had the legislature get behind the initiative. And with the current administration and the current parole commission, that transparency that Dr. Merriweather was talking about, that has had a huge impact. My clients used to get parole decisions like not parolable at this time, one-line decisions that didn't mean anything to them. They would get a rehearing, 3 years, no infractions. And then in 3 years, they'd come back again and get another rehearing that said 3 years, no infractions. And it was like, well, how many times do I have to spend another 3 years and no infractions? What more can I do? So this was the world that we were living in. It was like being a hamster on a hamster wheel, and you didn't know what anybody wanted, and you didn't know what anybody was looking for, and you just kept getting turned down, and you didn't get a good reason why. And it was confusing and it was distressing. And like Gordon said, people were frustrated. They were giving up. They were declining their parole hearings. And actually in 2018, that used to be my recommendation for lifers because I didn't see a point in putting them through the emotional distress of going through a hearing. And when I knew that they were going to be told no. So that used to be my recommendation. If you don't want to deal with, you're going to get told no anyway. If you don't want to deal with it, just decline your hearing. And that world has completely transformed. When I get a decision now, that decision says what the parole commission saw, what they would like to see if it's a rehearing, clearly defined steps. Not just a no infractions, keep working, and maybe we'll let you out next time, or maybe we won't. But here's the list of classes we want you to take. Here's the list of things we want you to accomplish. Here's specifically what we want you to secure for your reentry plan so that we can approve this next time. And when I bring that back to the parole commission with my client next time, because this has been long enough that I've had some of these rehears, guess what? They're going home. Lifers are going home when they are ready to go home, and they are being successful. This is both something that has benefited the incarcerated population and public safety. These people are out here in the community making positive impacts with the support of the parole commission, which is what the parole commission is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to sort through and figure things out, right? It's supposed to say, hey, this person is safe for release. They're going to be a benefit for society. How can I support them in doing that? And that is what I see happening today. Yes, there are still old administrative processes that get into gridlock. Yes, we still have some trouble with security classification going down with lifers because of old policies that are stuck, and you can find things to complain about. But guess what? If you look at it from when I started to where we are today, it is unrecognizable. Unrecognizable. People have hope. People have a chance. And I'm confident in telling my clients, if you engage with this process, you will get somewhere. If you get a decision that isn't clearly defined, write to Dr. Merriweather, write to Chairman Ely, and they get responses, meaningful, detailed responses that show me that their file has been reviewed. So to me, that has completely transformed. For the people on the inside, I'm going to go a little bit to people on the outside now, because DPP has also done a phenomenal transformation in the same time. DPP has social workers now. DPP has peer specialists now. DPP is not the agency that people thought it was back in the day. Oh, you're going to get an agent. They're going to do everything they can to send you back to prison. That's not what they're about. You're going to get an agent and they're going to do everything they can to help you, to keep you out of prison, to give you the resources that you need to be successful in the community. You have an agent, you can call your agent and say, I need help. And your agent's going to send you to somebody like me or somebody like Gordon. We're going to help you. Your agent's going to know where those resources are. And if they don't, they're going to make the right phone calls to do that. Now I have a relationship with DPP where I'm confident in teaching my clients before they come home and after they come home. This is somebody who's here to advocate. This is a resource. This isn't somebody who's here to put you back in prison. This is somebody who's here to help you. And if that is not the case, I am confident when I take that issue to leadership that it's going to be addressed and my client is going to get the help that they need. So really, if I could say one thing to everybody, it is communicate. Understand, we are not in the world that we were in the 2010s. We are not in the world that we were in the 2000s, in the 90s. We are in the world where you go and you pick up the phone or you knock on the door or you send the email and you say, hey, this is the problem that I'm having today. And you go and get it addressed, because the one problem that I see the most is that people still get stuck in that old world mentality and they don't reach out and they say, oh, well, it's a typical problem. I've seen this for years. No, you haven't. This is a problem where sometimes there are people in the staff that still have an old world mindset, and that needs to be elevated to leadership. And I will say we are in an unprecedented moment of change and an unprecedented moment of hope. So thank you for this wonderful collaboration that we have between the department and community organizations that has brought us further and faster than I have seen in my lifetime in Maryland.
It's really incredible, Anne. Thank you. And I just want to underscore a couple of themes that just jumped out about this. I mean, number one, it's unrecognizable because of leadership like yours and Gordon's and Prepares and all the people up on this stage. And that started on the inside. And I just continue to be so inspired and learn so much from all that you have brought to this change. And then secondly, and it's so related, the relationships, like the relationships, the trust, the ability to pick up the phone and say, we need something clarified, or that wasn't supposed to go that way, or we can do better. Those were really cultivated through a lot of intention and a lot of hard work and a lot of trust building. And I just really commend you. I witness it in our subcommittee. We have hard conversations. You know, we come around the table on a Friday morning. Sometimes it's working out some hard stuff or some aligning of what are very different perspectives about what and how things went wrong, or if something in practice is not what it's like in theory or on paper. And that is the grit and the showing up that you all are doing every day. So Samantha, Would love to go to you next to talk about what kind of policy changes that DPP has made to support people in the community and reduce revocations. We've already heard a little bit about that. Would love to hear it from your perspective.
Thank you. So when people think about parole and probation, there's a lot of work that goes into getting to parole and probation, a lot of energy and effort that goes through the whole parole process. But everyone forgets that then there's something else. There's still a lot of work to do, and that is where we come in. So the question related to policies, I think when it comes to policies, we have some very sound policies. Our most recent policy involves our return to field work, which is something I want to share to you because that's a critical component of how we supervise. If we are not able to be out in the community, we're missing a piece of the puzzle that is the individual that we supervise. So we're now in our third week back in the field and it is going marvelous. I've been speaking to agents, asking, how are you feeling? How's it going? And one of them said to me, this was the missing piece of the puzzle. It enables me to see the person I supervise as part of a whole. So I can get to meet their mom or their girlfriend or their child. It enables me to see a whole person with the issues that they might have outside of the 10, 12, 15 conditions of parole, mandatory, or probation. So in terms of policies, that's the most recent one, and it's working effectively. We have very many wonderful policies in place. We have policies to ensure that we're in compliance with the Justice Reinvestment Act that talks about how we handle technical revocations, technical violations, but more important than the policy, because if a policy isn't practiced and if we don't have the communication and collaboration between agencies, a policy is just several sheets of paper with a bunch of words on it. So really, at the end of the day, what we are working on is strengthening our practices, that collaboration, whether it's with the Parole Commission, like you mentioned, with social work. We're in the process of helping obtain agent assignments prior to release for individuals who have issues that have been identified, which enables social work on the outside to work with social work on the inside in order to effect the best possible change for the individuals that we supervise. I have prepared a list of things I wanted to talk about, but when I hear what my fellow panelists have said, you've used all my words. And that's what happens when you have to go outside and move your car. It's that collaboration piece. It's sitting down and having the conversations with the Parole Commission. We're engaged with our reentry partners at DOC so that those reentry plans that are completed inside become a live document that we can follow outside. So the work that's done inside doesn't just end and become a document that's saved in the document section of our system. It becomes a living, breathing item that we continue to work on. So we collaborate with reentry. We collaborate with the Parole Commission. We've got social work. We're very excited about our social work unit on the outside. The other thing that our social work unit, the DPP social work unit does is it enables us to look at the individual that we supervise holistically. So when an individual is in crisis, instead of going to the default, you're in crisis because you're a criminal. No, you're in crisis because you're a human being who has issues that you're dealing with. So what do we provide for you at this moment of crisis? Do we need to do that substance abuse referral, a mental health referral? Is it housing? Is it parental classes? Like, what do we need to do to work with other agencies in the community to keep people out? So that at the end of the day, DPP can become the end of the road so that we can turn things into a straight, more or less straight line, as opposed to a revolving circle of people coming out, coming back in, coming out. It's addressing the individual with the needs in the community. To that effect, like I mentioned, we're working with reentry. We're also partnering with the Safer, Stronger Together Communities, which is an initiative from the governor. So we're working with Department of Juvenile Services and DHS, Human Services, in order to identify networks, systems, families, because sometimes it's not just the individual that we supervise, it's an individual who may also be under juvenile supervision, for example. So we work holistically, we work together to ensure that needs are met. So we work with various agencies. We have, as was mentioned, the peer recovery specialists who are in our offices. And we're working towards bringing resources into the offices. to having little mini resource fairs available in the lobbies for the individuals who are there waiting to see their agents. So we're focused on working together, on building the partnerships and having the communication that leads us to where we need to be. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so as promised, we are going to leave some time for audience questions. So while you think of those, I'm going to do one more rapid fire round for our panelists. This has been really inspiring and energizing and optimistic about the change we're hearing about. So I want to take us back and just ground us for a moment to think about this last question for you all, which is that acknowledging we still have a really long way to go. As Elizabeth started us off with the day, we still have a very serious mass incarceration problem, racial disparities problem. We still have so many people inside who should not be there. So with that in mind and the work ahead, would love for you to each weigh in on how the public can engage and why it matters for the next steps of this work.
Thank you for that question and provoking and invoking these ideas. It is so very important for the public and every one of us to get involved because I'm going to give you another cliche. It takes a what to raise a child?
Village.
Exactly. It takes a village to take care of our community. So we need the help of every single person. Look for places to volunteer. Internet, if you have internet service, you can jump on, find Prepare. There are many other organizations such as Prepare that's assisting. We appeared at a reentry simulation a few weeks ago, which I so enjoyed. And there we were able to meet so many people that's out in the community that's assisting with resources that I didn't even know about. We were able to talk to a lot of different people. So my suggestion to people who are showing up here, continue to show up at events such as this. We are all needed to ensure that we contribute to positive social change. And in order for our re-entering citizens, our returning citizens to be able to succeed, they need the help of every single person in the community.
Thank you. So how can you help? If you're a provider, reach out to us and tell us what you have, what services you have so that we can partner with you. If you're a family member of a justice involved individual, call us when your person is having issues that we may not be aware about, because as the saying goes, we can't fix what we don't know about. So partner with us in that process of success. And communicate with us if something isn't going well. So it was mentioned that we have lots of fabulous agents, and I'm so glad to hear that. But if there's one out there who's not, let me know so that I can address it. We have a commitment to customer service, but we don't know what's happening if you're not a partner with us in communicating and letting us know what's happening. Thank you.
So I'm going to say two things. One is to communicate with us when you see a problem, because we can't fix it if we don't know about it. Yes, I know there's, statute and COMAR and policy, and these things conflict and sometimes they cause gridlock, but nobody can dig into a problem and get to the bottom of it unless we realize that you're having a problem. So don't be afraid to raise your hand and let us know that you're having a problem. And second, give us some grace. This is a big problem that has been building up over my entire lifetime. The past 50 years, we've just been spooling up and up and up and up with mass incarceration. We have made huge strides and the leadership is working very, very hard, but don't grab onto that one case where things went wrong and want to tear everything down or tear a person out of their space because one little thing went wrong when somebody is trying to fix the 50-year nightmare problem. Give us some grace. Give us some time. Work with us peacefully, helpfully support the effort. Don't try, tear down, build up, because whatever you put out in the world is what's going to be in the world. So if what you're putting out in the world is negativity and tear down, that's what's going to be in the world. But if what you're doing is putting your hand to the wheel and building with us, then that's what you're going to leave.
I'm gonna deal with the issue of the why. Why is this important? 97% of the people that enter the prison system are going to be released. They're coming back into the community, so that makes this a public safety issue. Everyone should be concerned about how that person returns and what is available for that person. This is why you should be concerned about this. In terms of how you can support by getting involved in the agencies or organizations or efforts that's dealing with decarceration, that's dealing with parole and release, that's dealing with modifications of sentence hearings, because this is an important step, because you just don't release somebody from prison after serving time and expect everything to go back to normal. It doesn't work that way. And this is the message I try to convey to everybody. You have to get involved and make sure things are in place to restore justice. It's not just about sending somebody to prison because they did a crime. It's about what's best for the overall community. And that means when people get released after serving the time, they should have a meaningful opportunity of finding employment, finding housing. These are real basic things that people are struggling with today because of their records. Some people take the position that it's just deserves. You did the crime, so you deserve that. But look at the other side of that. If I had no place to live, I have no money coming in, no job, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to hurt you or take from you or do something crazy to go back to where I was. So this is a public safety issue.
Give me the mic. I've got to say, a round of applause. This was fantastic. I've been working with this group for about 2 years now, and today, you pulled it all together so nicely. So I think that probably what I would say to any coalitions or representatives here today, when we attend sessions like this, and that includes you too, Commissioner, and your team, go ahead and announce what you heard today. I think the biggest thing was the transparency and the opening up and the collaborative effort that has made such a difference. And that we're open. Dr. Merriweather, you and I talked, you got a question, I'm here with my laptop, I can address it. I think that was a question that you had, Lou. The other thing I would say is we also talked about recruiting the younger generation. My son who's been incarcerated, it's not just about the person behind the walls, it's their families. So he has children. They're affected. I'm an old granny. I'm affected. I do what I can. But as a mother's cry, we work with a lot of mothers and a lot of parents that are struggling financially and otherwise that can't afford to support their folks behind the walls. So it does take a community, I would say, in recruiting the younger generation. I think we touched on this a little bit yesterday, Commissioner, as you're recruiting, now you're recruiting the younger generation. You're not recruiting people our age. I didn't know the commission had been there 48 years in the system. I retired after 42 years. Dr. Merriweather, you and I talked about your daughter, how she's already getting on the bandwagon for service in this space. So I would say not just sharing with your respective coalitions and your newsletters and that sort of thing and why you think it's important to engage. I would say let's think together and collaboratively about recruiting the future generation that's going to actually move us in a new direction. One of, I think, reform and rehabilitation. Thank you.
All right, and as promised, we're going to open it up for questions. Martina grabbed me before I had a chance, but then I'll let you go, Davon. If you want to go ahead and just say your question, I'll repeat it, and then we can have the panelists.
My name is Martina Hazelton, and I am the co-founder of Frantic Support Network. And I think I would be remiss if it's not mentioned because I was a part of this work group. And while we have focused on parole, and that's a great thing, Maryland didn't get to this mass incarceration issue with one rule or one thing, with several things that got us here. And it's going to be several things to get us out of here. So Second Look Back did pass. It was not even formed in which we wanted it to be, but I have to acknowledge Delegate Cheryl Pastor. And it's also going to be a mechanism by which many people come home, which is going to be needed for all of these things that we just talked about for parole to happen, to also happen. I'm an impacted family member. My husband served 28 years and 8 months in prison. And I know what all of this is like because I have the lived experience of what someone comes home and they contribute to society. It is so many faces here that would not have been who are doing great work in prison. And we need more. We need more.
Thank you so much. There is no way I'm going to be able to encapsulate all of that, but just to highlight for, I know the folks on Zoom can't hear unless we have a mic. So Martina Hazelton is one of the co-founders of Family Support Network and is a leader in the Second Look Coalition and just wants to highlight, and this was a priority for a different MEJC work group, that the Second Look Act passed this year, perhaps not in the exact form we wanted, but and we have our sponsor, Delegate Pasteur here, and she fought tirelessly to make sure that the Second Look Act passed. And we are so lucky to have an elected official who is willing to fight for people who are currently incarcerated in the way that you do, Delegate Pasteur. And yes, thank you. And Martina also wanted to highlight that everyone who is coming out through Second Look will also need the support, the reentry, the opportunities that the folks coming out through parole are. It takes a village. And, you know, I think I will just highlight, if you're interested in any of this, you can just check the box on your sign-in that says, join the MEJC listserv, and you will find out more. And then Davon, do you want to go ahead?
Two questions. The first is for those who aren't as familiar with the parole process, how do people who their perspective on their cases that they were unjustly incarcerated, how does that interact with someone going through the parole process? And then my second question is, you know, there are victims' rights organizations that usually feed into some of those like life means life narratives, those narratives around you know, Black people being inherently criminal. What are some of the advocacy approaches that you all are taking to rebuff what the victims' rights organizations do to undermine some of these kinds of efforts?
Okay. Two-part question from Davon Love, Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle. The first piece is, how does the fact that people have negative experiences, am I getting this right, through the parole process impact their
People who feel like they were unjustly convicted.
People who feel like they were unjustly convicted, thank you. How that impacts their experience through the parole process. And I'm going to pause and let our panelists answer that and then ask your second question. Thank you.
Briefly, the parole commission is very aware that everybody that's convicted is not actually guilty of crimes. I think everybody in America knows that's the case. So in those cases dealing with parole advocacy, prepare, and I'll speak to this a little, but prepare takes a position. You have to be honest. The parole commission is going to look at the documents and they're going to make a decision based on how you present along with the documents that they have, with police report, the convictions, whatever it is, they're going to make a decision based on that. And what we find sometimes is that people are not able to present themselves in a way that gives credibility to what they're saying. So a lot of times it's just about educating people, teaching them how to present in a way that people can appreciate what you're saying. And look, maybe they did just target you because of this. Maybe you're not guilty of that, but they're human like everybody else. And if you don't present yourself in a proper way, you can't expect the best outcome.
Good job.
Yes, yeah.
If I could just touch on it really quickly.
This is as far as
Oh,
I
it's
short to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Also, I think it's important for the defense attorneys in a case to make sure if there are like mitigating circumstances or anything that would show that that person likely did not commit the crime, if they're innocent, anything like that, make sure that gets into their parole packet. Because you said the police report is in there, what's in the actual file is the state's version of the incident. So while we're not allowed to have attorneys in that hearing, the state is in the hearing. because their version is in that file. You can't have defense stuff in that file, so you got to make sure that those things, if there are any mitigating circumstances surrounding the offense, if there are any evaluations, anything, make sure it's in the file so they can see it.
Thank you, and shout out to Prepare for helping individuals do that in a really effective and advocacy-centered and client-centered way. And then Davon's second question is, you know, kind of the contrarian often in these conversations ends up being victims advocacy groups. And this is to the whole group, I guess. How do we, what are the ways to have conversations with victims advocates and to kind of rebuff the narrative that they put forth and try and, I mean, I'm gonna put a few words in your mouth, but just maybe try to erase some of this victim offender binary that seems to really drive a lot of the carceral narrative. Give it to whoever.
Before she gets started, we have victims on our coalition, on our committee.
Stop stealing my thunder.
I'm sorry, put that out there. They have.
Good morning again. My place on the decarceration subcommittee is to make sure and ensure that everyone has a voice at the table, and that includes the victims. So, in order to rebuff and to provide understanding, we have to provide context, data, information on everything. So we bring the victims to the table, the victim advocacies to the table, and we have a discussion. Just as we had a discussion amongst ourselves when we came to the table. It took time for us to get to where we are in this subcommittee. And Ann and Gordon knows that. But communication solves everything. So how we rebuff is we get them to the table. And that has happened. That has happened. I think it was over a year ago, where we went out and sought out victims' representatives to bring them to the table. So we can be able to spread the word. So communication is how we rebuff that.
Just gonna make a quick note on that too. I know we have to wrap. I'm so glad you asked that question, Davon. We've been talking about this for a long time, and the way that the narratives get oversimplified and so polarized, and sort of trotting out kind of one tragic story and juxtaposing it with another in terms of how a victim or survivor feels about the policy decisions we should be making in Annapolis. And it's so painful and it doesn't align with reality. So one of the things that we're trying to build up is just more of a seat at the table for a much greater diversity of victims and survivors about their experiences and what would make this better. Because as others have already noted, we have this false binary of who we are even talking about when we say the victim. There are many victims who are inside. There are many people who had unaddressed trauma or undressed experiences with the system before they got incarcerated and that contributed to that. There are people who are victimized inside and it impacts their parole process. So when we populated those seats at the table for our group, we were trying to be very broad and very inclusive about what that victim and survivor status means. We are launching a new project at our center. So it's a little premature, but I'll take the opportunity because it so directly relates to your question, Davon, to preview it and would very much welcome and invite anyone to approach us to talk more, to get involved. But in partnership with the Second Look Coalition and many other folks in this room who have been talking about that same really painful problem and that kind of like legacy narrative about who gets to speak for victims and what do victims want from public safety policy. We are working on, similar to the Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice chapter model, building up a community where survivors can come together and share those experiences and then better translate that and create those opportunities for policymakers in Annapolis, and that doesn't traumatize people or doesn't ask one person to get up and tell their story in the paper or in a hearing. So we're super excited that Keith Wallington from Justice Policy Institute Institute will be joining to spearhead that work and would love to hear from folks if you want to get involved. Stay tuned.
I just wanted to add really quick. It just set on my soul really quick what Gordon said in regards to the perspectives of different people working in our area and our space. We also have to take into consideration that even the people who are doing the work, such as myself, I am a victim. So I sit at that table and I look at everything in my perspective as well. And I'm sure there are many other victims that are working in the capacity of the Department of Public Safety who holds their victimization and they hold it, it's a part of us. So we look out and we make our decisions, not just by our professional, but from our perspective as well. So there is an even realm of everything. Thank you.
We have one more question from the audience and then one question on Zoom and we're gonna have to wrap, sorry.
No worries. Good morning, everyone. My name is Talyn Twyman, Director of Community Investment for the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. One of the things that I want to highlight this morning is our work as a department to move us into the direction of being more trauma-informed and trauma-aware. And that goes not only for those that are incarcerated, but also for our staff members as well. Very, very key and important. So for example, we are aggressively working on expanding the programming that we offer to the incarcerated so that they have more peer-led models. Because trauma is one of those gifts that keeps on giving. And at the same time, we know that there is a shortage of staff members in public safety across the nation. So we've been able to onboard and adopt models that have actually been in existence for over a year now, and then bring on some additional ones. So my own trauma and healing program, Compassion Prison Project, Trauma Talks, and many others, the Pivot program, so many others on that list. In addition, we've also launched the DPSCS Health and Wellness Program and Committee for the department to take care of our people as well. And so my question is to especially our DPSCS team members, what other trauma-informed programs can you think of that the audience needs to know about?
Secondary trauma. We really need to focus on the secondary trauma because basically every time a professional has to read a state's version, a PSI that details the crime that happened so many years ago, it's a piece of you it's a part of you. And it depends on how you process that. A lot of us like to think that, oh, okay, well, we're okay. But that's the sneaky part about trauma. Trauma is very sneaky. It's a very sneaky entity. So it makes you believe that you're okay. And it can come out in any other way. It can come out even at home, not even on the professional realm. You're reading statement of charges after statement of charges after statement of charges, especially our hearing officers, our commissioners, our case managers, our parole and probation agents. They're reading it and reading it and reading it, and then it sneaks up on you. That is what trauma is. It is so very sneaky. So it is very important that we ensure that the people who are caring for our people, which is DPSCS, we have to look after everyone, are taken care. Just like on the plane, I know y'all are sick of me and these cliches. What does it, when the plane is going down and the oxygen mask drop, what we gotta do? Put it on first. Put it on first. So we have to put our oxygen mask on first before we can save anyone else.
You covered it perfectly.
And then I have one question from Zoom from Jamesina Green. She says, I want to raise a concern about the inconsistency in parole decisions. My son, Byron Green, was granted a parole hearing and has demonstrated clear evidence of rehabilitation for 19 years. Yet he was denied parole because of mandatory minimum loss. Why is it in the Why is it that in cases of proven rehabilitation and transformation, the commission doesn't exercise its ability to use discretion rather than defaulting to mandatory minimum law?
I prefer to get that right back to her.
Okay.
personally.
Okay. Commissioner Ely is communicating that he will get back to her directly. Okay, thank you. And we will get her email from, great. Okay, well, please give our panelists a huge round of applause. Thank you guys so much, not only for your knowledge and expertise today, but the work that you've been putting in every 2 weeks for the past year. We're gonna resituate for our education panel, take about a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 10:41. All right, and keep the conversation going.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I did. So you check your phone.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I saw I had to put on.
Hello.
We're going to get started. Everyone, thank you. All right, everybody, we're going to get started. There you go. You gotta bring it out. Yes.
We are running 15 minutes late, so if you're hungry, you might want to not make it half an hour. So I am Judy Lichtenberg. I work with Major and Fair, and I am chair of the advisory stakeholder group to the Prison Education Reform Commission, which was created by legislation last year. Delegate Marlon Ampry was the sponsor of this legislation that created a commission to study correctional education. Our chair, the chair of the commission, is Steve Sturrer, who is an expert on correctional education, who worked in the system, in the Maryland correctional system for many, many years before retiring. To my right is Andrea Cantora, who is a professor of criminal justice at the University of Baltimore and was the founder of the correctional education program at Jessup Correctional Institution. It at JCI begun in 2017 or there 16, which I've been teaching in ever since, so I can attest to its goodness. To her right is Danielle Cox, who's Director of Correctional Education for DPSCS and has been involved in this work previously for the Department of Labor. And to her right is Rochelle Rubin, who is Director of Correctional Education at the Maryland Department of Labor. And each of them is going to talk for about 5 minutes. I just want to say a couple of things. Many of you know probably that until 1994, Pell Grants were available to people behind the walls, and many people got degrees under that system. And then in 1994, when the crime bill passed, Pell Grants were no longer available to people behind the walls. They became available again about almost 10 years ago, and that helped Andrea's program to get started. I just want to say, I forgot to mention that the commission and the advisory stakeholder group created 3 different programs. Okay, I'm gonna let Steve discuss that. So I'm gonna, each of them is gonna talk for 5 minutes, and then I'll pose some questions that I hope they'll answer, and then we'll open it up to discussion. So Steve Sturrer, Commissioner of
I'm chair of the commission. I'm not sure commissioner because
Chair of the Commission.
there are other commissioners here, I guess.
Many commissioners.
Good morning. Thank you for your attendance today. I'd like to recognize all the commission members that are here, sitting here and other people out in the audience. Would you raise your hand if you're on the commission? So, Adam, raise your hand. You're still on the commission. And so there are 25 people on the commission. It was created by Senate Bill 623 in 2024 by Delegate Ampry, who sponsored the bill along with Senator Jill Carter. And the commission is called Prison Education Delivery Reform Commission. The idea is we are going to reform, change to make it better. That the background is simply, we felt, a number of us advocated for Major, Maryland Alliance for Justice Reform, that education was not producing as many completions. It wasn't as important maybe as it was in previous years when there were more people in school. And some of you can attest to that. I know Gordon sitting there shaking his head. So we got the bill passed. And then I was just lucky the governor appointed me as chair of the commission. I never expected that, but I really appreciate it. The activities of the commission in the last year or so are several. We've had a meeting once a month of the commission. We've had three work groups, adult basic education, GED, special ed is one group. Higher education is another group, career technology, workforce development is another. And those groups do all the grunt work, let's say, and are meeting bi-weekly in many cases. And in addition to those, we've had six prison visits. We've interviewed numbers of state directors of correctional education around the country. Those are just some of the activities. We turned in an interim report in June to the governor. And we will do an annual report, which has to be in by the end of the year, but we're going to try to do it by the end of November, because we may have some legislative considerations. And let me just say some of the accomplishments or some of the things we found out so far. One of them is that the ABE GED group started looking at data enrollment. Also, Career Tech looked at that. Data attendance, enrollment, and waiting lists, and completions of programs like GED or career technology. And we found out by some of our visits that the academic programs in the center of the state are probably half enrolled. We have many more seats that used to be filled many years ago. So we're way under capacity. So you can look at attendance and enrollment and say, well, maybe there's 90% attendance, but the classrooms are still half empty. So that's one of our big problems. The other problem is in the West and the East, ECI, East and West, and in RCI, at least in Cumberland, the schools are closed almost completely because of staff shortages. So no matter what we do to reform anything, if we can't get enough correctional officers, we're not going to have school. We visited those programs. Those teachers are ready and willing to work. They're sending packets back and forth to people in housing units, but people are not coming to school. So that's a big problem that the whole system needs to deal with. We also discovered that and think that this mandatory education thing of 240 days, which are listed as calendar days, doesn't really work too well because a lot of people never get to school. They get enrolled and then there's not going to school because of closures, but they're still being counted if they're doing work. And so they can go the whole time and maybe not even go to school, maybe just a fraction of the time. So we're going to look towards actually having those as school days. You don't do 240 calendar days. We're going to try to talk about maybe a recommendation to change that. One of the big things we discovered early on was that the Department of Labor took over with the idea that they could produce jobs, but we found out that nobody was even keeping track of how many jobs last year when we asked how many since 2008, when Department of Labor took over, actually got jobs. Nobody knew. I mean, that's just unconscionable because the law was passed to put it over in labor, but nobody's kept track of it because of privacy reasons of some sort. So we're looking to have that changed. And we've had some data changes coming that the Department of Labor is doing a good job with now, collection of data and publishing it. So I'm looking forward to that growing. And so we have some, we're gonna, for our future activities, I'm not gonna talk about career tech and higher education. Andrea will talk about higher education, and we'll hear a lot about other things that relate to career tech, but I will say that our future activities are gonna be many. We're gonna do more visits. We're gonna interview state directors to look at different models across the country. We're having a presentation in September on research that's been done in that field. I'm looking forward to surveying everybody in the institutions. People have tablets, and I want to see if we can talk to Department of Public Safety and Department of Labor to develop a survey to get input from the people who are the object of our work. And also maybe doing a survey of teachers. With that, I'm gonna let it go and say that I really appreciate this job. I appreciate all the people I'm working with. I'm finding positive people in labor and public safety who want to do a good job. I think it's a systemic issue we're dealing with, right? In many cases, that we can do a better job. And we want keeping it on a very positive note. Once in a while, we have some disagreements, but we are working together. And I'm just very much pleased with how things are going, and honored to be asked to be the chair of this commission. So with that, I'll pass it on.
I'm going to ask it now, just to go in order here, to Andrea Cantora, Dr. Cantora, Director of the JCI Higher, Second Chance Pell Grant Program.
Thanks, Judy. So University of Baltimore runs a higher ed in prison program that we've operated since 2016. And just to give a little bit of context, I'm the chair of the subgroup on the commission that is looking at higher education in prison programming and how we can improve it. But context about like the state of Maryland and higher ed in prison, we currently have, and Danielle is going to correct me when I get something wrong. But we currently have 4 college and universities operating in the state of Maryland. All of them are located in the Jessup region. Surprising. We are working to change that. The Department of Public Safety is actively working with colleges and universities to expand that to other parts of the state. So again, there's only 4 colleges right now. We're all offering bachelor degree programs, but others are in the work to bring in certificate programs, associate degree programs, and other bachelor programs to spread throughout the state. So more people in other regions have opportunities for getting a higher ed credential. So the commission's, the work group on higher ed in prison, we're focused on expanding access and opportunity for more colleges to get involved. As you can imagine, if we think about the incarcerated population in the state, not every person incarcerated is eligible to attend college. They first must get their GED or high school diploma. That's the most basic thing that has to happen first. But all of our programs have really long wait lists because we can't possibly serve as many people as are in our prisons. So that's one issue that we've been looking at is how to expand and serve more people so we don't have these long wait lists and more people can apply and have that opportunity. So before the commission was formed, I want to share a little context about things that have already been happening in the space. I think higher ed and prison in Maryland is at a really great place. Again, we started our program in 2016. There have been others that have started after. The first one, and I'm only going back a decade and a half, Goucher's Prison College Partnership started in about 2012. So we've been doing this work for some time, and we've often been doing it in silos with not a lot of support other than the opportunity to go in and use the space. It's been the past few years that the support for higher ed in prison has really had this amazing shift. The previous panel talked about system change over the past few years, and Gordon and Ann highlighted all these positive things that they have seen happening when it comes to parole. The same is true with public safety and education. And I've seen that change since I've been doing this for 9 years. And we have a really great partnership. To highlight one example is the Department of Public Safety, and sorry if I'm saying what you're going to say, entered into a MOU with the University System of Maryland. So the University System of Maryland oversees all the higher ed 4-year public institutions in the state of Maryland. So this MOU and agreement with public safety and USM was really historic for the state. It will allow any 4-year public institution to enter into the system after they go through a really long approval process. But it just opens the doors and creates opportunities that weren't there before or might have been difficult to start up. So the University System of Maryland, USM, has been really interested in expanding education in the state. Beyond just this MOU agreement with the department, they have been studying this issue for the past 2 years. They've actually hired a consultant group to study the barriers of accessing higher ed in prison and what are the strengths of the programming that exists and how can we develop it. So they've been a great partner. Just to highlight quickly, I have a few minutes to highlight or no, but I'm just going to say them real quick. The commission is working on a few priority areas to improve higher ed in prison. Some of them are about making tuition assistance or state financial aid available to incarcerated populations. Right now, incarcerated people only have access to federal Pell Grants. So we are looking to create an opportunity for them to also access state financial aid. That's one of our areas that we're working on. Space, incentives, technology, or other areas that the work group has been spending months talking about of how we can improve those different areas. I know there's gonna be questions about those areas, so I'm not gonna speak to that yet, but I will when the questions come.
Danielle Cox, Director of Correctional Education for DPSCS.
Correct. Just a little kind of background on my position and what I do. As the Director of Education Services, I use our partnership and collaboration with the Maryland Department of Labor. We have Director Rubin right here to my right to ensure that they are able to provide the COMOR required GED, CTE, adult basic ed programs in our state prisons. So making sure that partnership is accessible to our population. They have what they need. They're able to access the prisons with no problem. So we're able to collaborate on that. In addition to having direct oversight of our college programs, per federal law, which when Judith was talking about the Pell Grants when they were reinstated in July 1 of 2023. That law required that the oversight entity that has oversight of correctional facilities in the states, meaning the DOCs, have to provide an approval path and work with the Higher Education Commission, the accreditation partners in that region, in addition to U.S. Department of Ed. Of course, the colleges to create an approval path that includes a stakeholder group that we have oversight of that approves their applications for these programs. Yes, it is a long approval process, unfortunately. It starts with MHEC and then goes to our advisory group and then to middle states and then finally Department of Ed. So right now, our second chance Pell programs, which are moving over to what are called prison education programs, PEPs, are in that process with the Department of Ed, finishing up those approvals to start down that path. Those 4 colleges currently behind the fence, and that's UB, Bowie State University. We have Georgetown University and Goucher College currently. We are also, like we were saying, we have that USM partnership. So that is bringing Towson University is going to be out in the Western region at Maryland Correctional Training Center. Anne Arundel Community College will be coming into one of our pre-release units. Hagerstown Community College will be coming also to 2 sites for AA degrees and a welding certification up in Hagerstown also. So we are talking very diligently to make sure that we're able to get in not just the 4-year bachelor degree programs, but also certifications and AA degrees for our shorter term incarcerated population to be able to get their degrees before getting out. And like Andrea said, they have been amazing partners to be able to ensure that we're able to provide these educations, including the Maryland Department of Labor. I know one of the things that we have been talking about on the commission, which I sit on as Secretary Scruggs's designee on that commission, is a lot about technology and the providing equitable technology access for our population. Of course, our colleges have access to virtual programming in addition to hybrid classes. And that is something that we are wanting to explore with the Department of Labor. You know, we had brought up talking about shutdowns. If we had that virtual, when we get that virtual ability through their education tablets, then we can actually provide that no matter where they're at on the compound or on the, whether it's housing units in the classrooms using the tablets. So leveraging the technology access that we know that not only that they need for successful post-release, because we know our world revolves around our phones and tablets and computers, but also to be successful prior to release to make sure they're getting the education that they not only require but deserve for that. Oh, really quick and talking about Goucher, just a really positive thing that we just got. Goucher College just got a federal earmark for two big, huge trailers that were put at our women's prison to offer full-time college. They were doing part-time, which took 8 years to get that 4-year degree. It is now going to only take 4 years for our women to get degrees so that they're not leaving without it. They're getting it while inside. And then we're able to work with the Department of Labor and other partners to get them employment once they get on the outside.
Department of Labor, Director of Correctional Ed.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So, it really, when you're going last on this row, you're having to come up with the stuff, right? So, but, as I prepared for today, one of the things that I think has been fundamental, to my career and certainly to the work that we're doing with education in the Department of Labor is something Nelson Mandela said, which was, education is the greatest weapon with which one can use to change the world. If you apply that contextually to correctional education and those that are currently incarcerated and those that are formerly incarcerated, it never has more significance, right? Because there are a few absolutes that we know, and we know that when we're thinking about correctional education, it can't be performative, right? It's not binary, right? This is some of the most challenging and most rewarding work that we're doing when we think about that. So when we think about our work and what we're trying to accomplish in correctional education, we're thinking about the fact that the research shows that if someone is incarcerated and they leave, they're a returning citizen, their chances of recidivating are way less if what? If they've gone through the educational program. You heard some of our counterparts in the earlier part of the morning talk about the fact that someone has to leave with something in mind not to be able to recidivate. So they have to have housing, transportation. If they leave with a GED, if they leave with an industry recognized credential, which is what we're offering in correctional education, the data shows that not only are they showing up in the labor market more often than others, but they're also showing up in the labor market with higher wages, right? And we know our work is to ensure that they get to the place where they are making a living wage according to the state of Maryland. So our work is especially important. I want to identify just a few things before we get to the questions. In 2019, the GED rates were about 438, right? That's how many were accomplished in the fiscal year. 2020, what do we know happened? Right, COVID, the pandemic happened. And so GED rates went down tremendously when school came back into session in that 2021, 2022 year, right? Averaging somewhere about 100 and change. Just so we contextualize it, last fiscal year, we earned 350 GEDs, which tells you we're trending in the right direction, getting back to those pre-pandemic years. And then how do we set the situation to even get better than that? So some of what you'll hear us talk about is, all of the complexities of educating in the correctional system, right? There is no panacea for what's going to handle it. But we know that if our teachers are ready and prepared to teach, if our students have access to the curriculum, and if we're thinking out of the box about different ways that we can accomplish our goals, like virtual learning, then we're excited about the direction that we're going in.
Whoops. Well, my questions are kind of general and are really for everyone, although people will have different expertises about how to answer them. And basically the most important question is, or what are the most significant barriers for incarcerated students to get educational opportunities? And I'd ask you all to distinguish to the extent that you can between sort of basic education, GED, special ed, that's one category, higher ed, Andrea's specialty, another, and career and workforce development, which I think is the topic of a tabling session later. But so should we go in order again? Or is that unfair? Should we go backward?
Some context. You have to have a GED or a high school diploma to go into career technology classes, to go into college level classes, to work in Maryland Correctional Enterprises. If you don't have a GED, you're going to be doing mediocre jobs the rest of the time you're behind bars. In the 1980s and 1990s into the 2000s, we reached as many as 1,000 GEDs a year. In the early 1990s, 33% of the inmate population was in school, including college, ABE, GED, career tech. Recently, in these years, it's less than 10%. It's commendable. We're coming back up to 300 GEDs, and we had 400 before COVID. But in the early 2000s, we kept that number up from 1,000, and it went down to about 600 or 700. And there was a new GED in 2014. It's much more difficult. But if you look at community colleges, they rebounded. They had the same drop, but they've rebounded in pass rates and numbers of people getting GEDs. And so we're looking at why we are still low. But one of the things is we're finding a barrier is we have a lot of half-empty classrooms. There's got to be something wrong with the process of identifying and placing people. And we've started seeing some of that stuff in the visits. And we're going to look a lot more at that and try to get people together and try to figure out how to do things better and fill those classes. I got that from the teachers that I talked to. My class is half full. It never used to be. So I'll leave it at that.
I just want to add that a couple of weeks ago, Steve and I and Danielle and others were on a site visit to ECI to look at the schools, the school system and the library. And we were shocked to discover that it was dark and that no classes had taken place since June 25th because of staffing shortages. And the direct problem there was that there were 6 people, incarcerated people in the hospital in Salisbury. And whenever you have an incarcerated person in the hospital, you have to have 2 staff people guarding them, even per person. So that was 12 people who were away. And so for 2 months, there had been no school at all. So Andrea, would you address this problem with respect to higher ed in particular?
Sure. So just to highlight a few barriers for higher ed programs, there's 3. No, there's a lot, but 3 that I can, talk about that the commission is working on right now. Space and time is really a key issue, and we're talking about it, we're addressing it. The issue with higher ed programs is we share space with the prison school. GED programming happens in the morning, and then in the evening is when college starts, like around 2. And there's other things that happen in the school, religious programming and different self-help groups. So we're sharing classrooms with different programs and maybe different colleges. At JCI, the University of Baltimore shares space with Bowie. So that's 2 colleges in 1 space. We each have 4 classrooms. Some classrooms only hold probably 15 students. So we're limited to the number of students we can have in our programs because of this space and time constraint. Goucher is pretty amazing because they're trying out these trailers, which allows them to grow their program and allows them the opportunity to have day students full time. So that's a really unique solution that the other colleges will ask for some money from somebody and hopefully get it. But that's a solution. The other issue is resources in terms of being able to operate these college programs. Pell Grants are paying the tuition and maybe books for students, but a federal Pell Grant does not cover an individual's full cost of tuition, especially at a 4-year university. So we have to pay for staff and laptops and books, because tuition usually doesn't even cover books. So programs have to fundraise and have to go after grants to kind of supplement and keep that going, which is challenging for some universities. So those are just a few challenges that I'll highlight.
Really quick, just to comment a little bit. I believe you mentioned ECI, and we actually recently did look into that. And yes, we did have our occupational classes there were shut down for a little bit due to the fencing project that we had going on. That was, very important and that needed to be done. But those are actually getting back started again, and part of the virtual learning will help to get some of that those classes also existing. The academic though, is in full swing and has been, when we look at both Department of Labor and, DPSCS data on that. So just wanted to really quick address that, but with the significant, looking at like barriers and significant problems, I think that our biggest one, and this is something that the entire nation faces, is old infrastructure when it comes to being able to provide internet access, secure internet access in the facilities. We have some very old buildings that were not designed to provide internet access to incarcerated population. So that is something that we are actively looking at. We're working with the Department of Labor with putting funding in to be able to provide this. We've already started it. We've done a pilot at MCIW where we are upgrading fiber and cabling to get that installed there. With kind of the access that the colleges have in their prisons is kind of patched into other things. So, and isn't the best at sometimes because of that. So we are working very hard to make sure that we do those also at the same time so that we don't have any lagging latency or problems there. So those upgrades are in process. In addition, just to let you know, we also have tablets through DPSCS that are on the housing units through our vendor Viapath. Those tablets are available to the entire population, and there are many educational programs and modules on those tablets, one of which is through Adobo, which I believe there's over 100 modules in adult basic ed, literacy, college prep courses, workforce development, reentry, life skills, there's anger management, tons of different programs. And we actually had just pulled the data. I believe it showed there was over, within the last 2 years, 14,000 certificates were given within those different programs. So anyone, whether you're on a wait list, you're just sitting on the housing unit, wanting to be interested in education, or say we've given Department of Labor that curriculum, they can actually then give those lessons and assign that to their students to be able to do as extra work on the housing units. So we are, definitely looking to ensure that we're able to give that access when either we don't have the availability to person-to-person classes, but also make sure they have it at any time on the housing units.
Thank you. So a few things. Our programming consists of the academic program, ABE, GED, occupational, that's where you can get the industry recognized credentials, HVAC, construction, plumbing, a variety of other occupational programs, transition, and we offer special education services as well through the academic program. I think it's important to note that the GED changed in 2015 and it became much, much more difficult. It also moved online, right? And so one of the things that we're working on through our tablet program is digital literacy. We understand how significant that is for the reentry process. So when I think about thousands of GEDs, right, we don't have the infrastructure. We're seeing more of our students coming in at a lower ASC level. Our classes are broken up, right? If you're ready to take that pre-GED test, where do you land? If not, what services and supports do you need? Right. So we have more individuals coming in who are on that lower end of the GED side, where it's going to take a while to get them the instructional support that's needed for them to be able to pass the GED. So I think in context, that's important. one of the initiatives that we have going on is the virtual program. This past fiscal year, we tried out we called it TISP, the Transition Independent Study Program. So we were looking to see how many individuals could get through self-paced programming using the tablet. We actually did that in our library, which is also under our programming. And that allowed us the opportunity not to impede anything that was happening in the academic classrooms. And we actually had individuals that there are 5 courses that we put on the tablet for the transitional program. We had individuals finish all 5 of the courses, like parenting, entrepreneurship. They finished all 5. Some individuals finished 1 or 2. And we actually are tracking that data. So we got a grant through GoCap that will allow us to buy more tablets. And we're going to have a pilot institution where we're doing virtual learning, meaning our teachers will be on the LMS teaching live instruction, right? Because you all know there's no substitute for first instruction in the classroom. And we're excited about that. We think we're going to see success with that. And so when we talk about barriers, the one that I would like to mention, since technology was also already mentioned, I think the reentry piece, and that's important, right? The struggles that we're seeing with employers really being open to giving our returning citizens an opportunity, because the credentials that our returning citizens have are significant. Right, but we're digging deeper into the data to see how many of our folks go through our program and actually get employed in the credential that they've received, right? If you visit our programs, when our folks come out, if they're in plumbing, they're ready. They're ready to go into a home and do whatever they have learned. It is research-based and backed, but oftentimes we're seeing they don't get that opportunity. And that's something that we really want to work on along with our counterparts in DPSCS.
And I want to give really quick a shout out to Department of Labor for that, which is the partnership with Maryland Longitudinal Data System. They have done an amazing job with partnering with them and us, not just for us doing the post-secondary and getting the data we need to be able to know which programs are going to be effective coming in, but their work on looking at their programs that they've given, the certification they've given out, and actually looking at individual students over the last, 15 years, to see what employment that they have actually gotten and what job sectors, what wages that we've seen post-release. So we know, is the programs that we're offering effective? And we've seen that there are many of the programs that are. One of the things that Department of Labor was able to flesh out was, if you have an occupational skills training certificate put with a reentry certificate, like life skills, something like that, that's where we're seeing the highest wages and the highest employment, and not just right out of prison, but long-term also. So just want to give a shout out for Department of Labor for that.
You know, I'm going to let Steve respond to some of these remarks, and then we'd like to open it up to the audience.
Some more context. Most of the people that come into our prisons don't have a high school diploma. And if we're only giving out 300 or 400 a year, a lot more people are leaving. We're still staying at the low level of people not completing. And if you don't have a GED, you're not going to get into that job market. So I don't want to, it's sounding like we have a lot of great programs starting, but they're not reaching enough people. And the technology thing is just beginning, and we have all kinds of barriers, and I commend what's happening here. But if you talk to the teachers, you look at your own experience, if you don't have a live body connected to that student, even if they have some technology, that person has to be an extremely independent learner to do anything. You can put them in reentry, but if they're in basic literacy programs, and they're not going to be able to do those 5 modules on parenting and entrepreneurship. They don't have the reading ability. They don't have, you just can't do it without bodies. We have a lot of teachers sitting out there just frustrated. I've met a number of them in our visits who are chomping at the bit to talk with their students, and instead they're sending tablets, which have to come back that day. They do not go to the housing units. They can't take them in their cell at night. they grab it for a couple hours. But there's not even enough tablets for all the people that are enrolled. And so we have a big technology issue. It's costing, it would cost a lot of money. So we have we have systemic barriers of getting people in school when you have half the classrooms empty, academic classrooms, when you have enough officers, the classrooms are still half empty, something is wrong. And we're gonna try to get to the bottom of it and try to solve it. I think people want to solve it. It wasn't that way before. You know, it was better in terms of the numbers of that were in programs. And it's not just education. If they're not in education, they're not in mental health programs either, and they're not in substance abuse programs. They're just not getting out there. I don't know how to solve the officers' problem, but where we have teachers, we're gonna try to make it work better as far as the commission is concerned. And we have the cooperation of Dollar and Public Safety, and we're gonna work at it. And the commission has got a 5-year term. We go to 2029. And as long as I'm still alive and on the commission, I'm gonna push for it. And make sure that we continue to try to work at these problems. So let's get some audience questions.
Before we do, I just wanted to thank everybody who's involved in this commission, and particularly the commission and the stakeholder group and the subgroups, the work groups. One person who's not here today is Ainsley Mensch, who works with Steve as the kind of administrator of this program. And she's been incredibly helpful and is on a much deserved break. I think she might be on Zoom, but I just wanted to make sure she got credited. So questions? Yes. Can you speak up, please?
My name is Anita Doremus, and I want to thank everyone that's on the board today. I was at NCIW for 14 years. I was in the Gap Service program starting in 2012. I did that 8-year program and was able to get my bachelor's degree before I came home in 2023. What I wanted to say to everyone in here is how important it was and how helpful it was for me to have my bachelor's degree. I start mortgage on the 27th of this month to get my master's in social work. I have my own LLC. It's an encouragement and empowerment program that I have done at County Detention Center. I did it at Vets Military Center, Veterans Education and Training, and several other places. I also work on a nonprofit where I mentor the young ladies whose mothers I left. So a lot of the ladies that are still incarcerated, I mentor their daughters twice a month and go pick them up, take them places, and do things with them. So I need for just for a second, everybody in this room that knows me, you raise your hand, please. The reason that I want everybody to see these hands is because it's really, really important that we have that support from the components. And everybody that raised their hand, I've cried to you, I've spoken to you, they helped me in one way or another. And it's really important that you help us when we're on the inside, but also continue that aid and assistance when we get home, because I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for the support, the education that I got inside, and the continued support that I have on the top. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Could you say your name, please?
Hey, okay. My name is Harold Bale. I have a lived experience of 28 years in the home prison system, but I also have a master's degree in education. I'd like to make 2 points. One point of clarification: Maryland does not award GEDs. Maryland awards high school diploma. And I've been a literacy instructor for a while. I have been a GED instructor at 2 local communities. So to many instructors who say you don't put towards your GED, I try to correct every time. And I've seen too many times on the resumes that have a criminal history, GED. That's an obstacle they're putting in front of themselves for employer. But some people think about GED or guys in hospital.
And I just, I think people are having trouble hearing you. I think.
What's the question?
My question, just a point of clarification.
I'll repeat it.
Yeah, repeat it. High school college, but please do not refer that we people have a GC. And
Really quick, before you say your second part, I'm just going to repeat. Thank you, Harold. You have lived experience and you have your master's in education. And Amina Daramas, thank you for sharing your story as well, starting her master's at Morgan. And got her bachelor as well, incarcerated at MCIW through the Goucher program. The point of clarification is that Maryland does not award GEDs, they award high school diplomas. And the piece of advice from that is making sure that anyone, especially who's been incarcerated and is like updating their resume, make sure that the indicia is high school diploma and not a GED. Is that correct? All right, keep going.
Thank you for that clarification. So, I've been self-driven. I have a bachelor's degree, after 20 years in Montreal. And then I obtained my master's degree. I learned that there were scholarships available. I didn't have, for the master's, I didn't have to be told twice. I applied to South State University, where I got my, bachelor's degree while I was incarcerated in Maryland Detention. And, I was accepted to that program and got the scholarship 30 days. So, what I've been able to achieve should not be exception. Many other individuals, and I thank their efforts for the panel and everybody else here. One life is invaluable, so.
My question. Yes, sir, you, Bobby Pittman.
How you doing? I'm Bobby Pittman. You see I'm flagging UB. Graduate from the University of Baltimore. I went to prison. I was 16 years old. I was reading at a third grade reading level, and I experienced had to go get a specialist in to help me go through my GED. But I had a celebration when I had peers helping me with it because they around all the time. So I had a celebration and wound up passing my GED, going into, as they call it, a scholars program, and wound up going to the University of Baltimore. And from that, I graduated cum laude. And I'm going for my master's degree. I'm in my second year. And right now, I want to thank Danielle Cox and of course, Dr. Cantor. They got me to be able to go back into the prison and teach classes on reentry. And I'm on active parole. It was unheard of. They said this is something that has never been done. You are a trailblazer. And I went in there, I went to minimum security first. So I didn't know how many people was in UB. So when I went in there to teach a class, it was like 500 people in there. So I'm sitting there like, damn, UB done grew. It was, but it wound up being the whole jail, whoever can get out came to listen to me teach reentry. And that opportunity, and I wanted to ask you about, like, have y'all ever thought to link in with the peers in there to have like a place where the people in the GED program can constantly receive the things that they need in the I'm lost the words right now, but I'm shaking and everything, and I'm excited. But basically to provide them the platform where they can learn from.
Outside after they leave?
No, on the inside while they're there.
Yeah, we do have tutors in most of our academic classes. And
For the mics, people on Zoom.
sure, no, thank you for the question. Yes, we do have tutors, and what you said about that peer support, we've seen that. That's quantitative. We have tutors, and we're building out on the virtual program. I know there are going to be things about the technology that we're working on, but we are building out a study session with a study buddy for tutors to be able to continue to counsel individuals to getting closer to that high school diploma.
And actually, our certified peer recovery specialists, especially those at JCI who, are certified, they've been there. Some are actually in the UB program and the BUI program, do support those guys in the program too, both on the housing units and the classroom. I'm sure Dr. Cantora can even attest to that. That Certified Peer Recovery Specialist Program, which actually will be spoken about a little bit later, has been amazing. That partnership with the Department of Labor to provide that training and then for them to actually get assigned as a job. And then they are put into different places within the prison to actually work in that capacity. And that is one of those capacities. Because we also know how recovery and stuff can actually affect the way that we are able to study and do our jobs and be able to be in education and effectively learn. So yeah, they've been a great support on that.
We've got time for one final question. Gordon.
Yes, and this is kind of loaded because I'm on the commission, but I think it's something that everybody needs to hear. Just like in the community, people are not fully pursuing education for people. So just because something is built and available, it doesn't mean that people on the inside will take advantage of that. What incentives, what are we looking at to try to motivate people to get their GEDs, to get in vocational trades, to get occupational trades, to get college? What are we doing on the inside to make this happen?
Very good question. Steve wants to have the last word, so
I didn't say that, but
he wants to have a word and it will be the last word.
you said it. Just a little bit of confusion about high school diploma and GED. Yes, people in Maryland, in prison, jail, community colleges take the GED test. There are also alternative high school, but it's not, we only have the GED test in prison, Maryland prison. You do not receive a GED certificate. You receive a Maryland high school diploma, just like you would if you graduated from it. So Maryland law turns the GED into a Maryland high school diploma. So on your resume, you can say you have a high school diploma. That's it. So it's confusing, but that's how it works in Maryland.
But to answer Gordon's question, yes, please, yeah, thank you.
So I believe it was 2023 that we instituted legislation through COMAR that actually gives diminution credits for earning of not just one of the adult basic education certificates, but also the GED in addition to all degree programs. And you can get all of them. So if you go, you get the level 4, you get the GED, you get the certificate, you get an AA, you get a bachelor's degree, you get those anywhere from 40 to 60 diminution credits for every single one of those. So it's not just you get one, that's it. In addition, there are days given for every 10 days, for every 30 days that you sit in an education program, you also get those. So there are definitely those incentives too, in addition to pay. Obviously, that is something that is contentious, and I know that, that's been talked about too. But DPSCS has been a great, has been looking into the pay structure, and I'll give a shout out to Deputy Secretary of Operations Annie Harvey, who helped start that. So believe me, it is being looked at because we do know the disparity there with pay from on the outside in addition to what's able to be given on the inside.
And just one last word, I
Back to that. And to piggyback off Gordon's question. Can I ask a question?
Sure,
okay,
nice and loud.
as long as
Nice
I
and loud, nice and loud.
come closer.
Good morning, everybody. Yvonne Bradley Wilson, Correctional Ombudsman. That is wonderful. How is that effectively being communicated to incarcerated individuals who may not understand the value of what is being offered?
I don't know if I can answer that. By the way, the diminution of sentence bill was passed. And that was a Maryland thing. I just want, no, I'll answer the question, but that bill was an effort by the Maryland Alliance for Justice Reform. So let's pass it back to.
So the colleges periodically do information sessions. They do.
Repeat the question.
Sure.
The correctional ombudsman for the people on Zoom. Thank you.
Sure. How is the incentives being effectively given that information and communicated out to the population? So the colleges often do information fairs to be able to look for people to come get enrolled in their programs. Department of Labor, Director Rubin can talk about some of the things that they do to make sure that the population, including intake, or know of some of the incentives available for their programs. But definitely the college programs, we've done college fairs, we've done brochures, we've done stuff on the tablets, information on the tablets too. So it is being communicated out there to the population.
And I'll just say from our standpoint, we encourage all of our students to stay and take the ASC4, and we make room for them to be able to do that so that they can get the diminution credit and that certification.
Well,
One more question.
we are well over time.
Okay, one more
What do you
question.
think?
It's
One
fine.
more
Yeah,
question.
I guess the question is, I listening to everyone's comments, where's the connection between the mental health and trauma-informed care? Allowing those ones that don't even know how to utilize the tablets correctly, understand that certain institutions don't have voucher, because Jessup has the most. How do this panel or others within BCPS are making strides to ensure that the people behind the wall actually are getting the emotional support to know that education is a tool? What's the trauma-informed training approach to that?
Question.
Yes, question.
That's a good question. It's not clearly within the purview of the education people, but
Actually wish our director of social work was sitting up here, Amanda Cram and Michael Richards, substance
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, okay. How are those who need trauma-informed care, recovery services, that sort of thing, informed about these programs and know how to use some of the technology and that sort of thing? I know that on both the education tablet platform, in addition to the ViaPath, there are instructional videos and that sort of thing that they can go through, in addition to certifications on the ViaPath tablets for, trauma, informed care, cognitive behavioral, anger management and those sort of things. So we are provided, and I know that our staff also provides training on how to use, a lot of that technology. In addition to, we have a wonderful social work division, and in addition to our substance abuse, that does a lot to make sure that they understand what's available for education, in addition to case management too.
Conception, to follow up with your question, conceptually, education, substance abuse, mental health, and other programs ought to be working together as part of the reentry process that starts today. Somebody gets into the system and have to get out then after. And the better that we can coordinate, and I want as the commission to look at the coordination with the reentry process, with the individual plan for each person, and then how all that works together. Because education is just one aspect. You can educate somebody, but if they have a mental health issue, substance abuse, that's not taken care of. They're gonna fall down, because of that, when they are released. So all programs should be working together, and the reentry process, the reentry program is where that should take place, through case management right from the beginning until after release. I don't know if that helps, but that's the concept I have in my mind of how education fits in.
There are referrals, if case management knows that this person needs this service, they're referred to social work, mental health, that sort of thing also. So we make sure that anytime we have an II who needs a service, they are provided that information. I know our executive director of reentry, Ellen Rappaport, is in the process of looking at where are all those connections between our reentry specialists, between the labor's reentry navigators, and in all of our different programs. Because you're right, we've got all this great stuff happening, but if it's not coordinated well and the population doesn't know about it, then we are falling short. So definitely working on making sure those connections are provided.
Okay, I think we have come to the end for the moment, and want to thank you all for being so patient. What?
I'll take
You want, okay.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to coordinate and make sure everyone on Zoom is feeling heard as well. I'm just gonna highlight two comments that we have from our Zoom, and then we'll take a quick break and come back for our tabling. Just highlighting the
increased use of lockdowns in part due to staff shortages, really preventing access to a lot of the things that should be available in the courses that should be available. And then definitely an issue that I saw as a post-conviction attorney, there are a lot of preclusions for individuals with long sentence or serving certain sentences from participating in education. Just highlighting both of those issues and just encouraging anyone who wants to join in the conversation. You can join these lovely education individuals and others by joining the MEJC meetings and having conversations with all of us. We are going to turn it over to the treatment tabling at 11:55. I believe lunch is already set up. Amari, can I get a head nod on that? Yep. So if you want to go ahead and head back to the same room where our breakfast was served, there is now lunch there. Let's go ahead and get lunch. And then we will table as we're eating. We'll expand this room over. And I just want to highlight the 4 tables that will be staffed by experts. I know I said the word lunch and now everyone's heading out. But there is going to be a medical treatment and implementation of parole reform table, a volunteer services table, a substance use disorder treatment, certified peer recovery specialist and social work table, and a conditions of confinement and in custody deaths table. Thank you again so much to our education panel. We appreciate you. Big round of applause. And we'll circle back up in about 10 minutes.
Oh, bravo. Excellent job. Okay. Great.
Excuse me, 1 second, sir. Is you John Cluster? Huh? Is you John Cluster? Yeah. Yeah. What's your name? Nines. Jeff, Nines. Oh, Jeff, Nines. I thought you.
I'm very familiar.
Am I gonna see you at Jeffrey's rehearing?
Of course.